Hello, I'm Rosemary Firman, librarian at Hereford Cathedral. This is the second in a series of short films looking at illustrations of human and non-human beings in some of the cathedral's medieval books. All the images you'll see are of things at Hereford Cathedral, and particularly the manuscript books that form part of our amazing chained library. Last time, we took a close look at this miniature painting and worked out that it shows a judge seated in the middle, hearing evidence on two sides of a dispute. On each side, a layman has a cleric representing them, and the clerics are presenting documentary evidence in support of their claims. What gives a painting life and drama is the way in which the hands are drawn. The gestures have meanings that we can still read today. It looks as though the judge is speaking with the advocate on the left. His gesture of lifting the open hand, palm outwards, is one we still use today. Say if we want to speak during a meeting, or if we are acknowledging someone giving way to us. On the other side, the advocate is pointing to his document, drawing attention to it, as if to say, "But what about this here?" These gestures have a timeless eloquence. They still speak to us across the centuries. Once you start to notice this, you will find hand gestures everywhere in manuscript decorations, and they are not there by chance. They are there to make the meaning clear. The language of gestures goes back way before the Middle Ages. The Greeks and Romans developed a hand gesture code which was used by orators and rhetoricians. This was continued in the iconography of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which has an unbroken tradition continued today by iconographers in both the East and West. If you visit Hereford Cathedral, you can see some stunning examples. This one in the Lady Chapel, written in 1999 by Aidan Hart, shows the Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus. He is making the gesture of blessing, while she gestures towards him, drawing attention to him, indicating that he is the way. This one, by Peter Murphy, is one of the panels on the Sacrament House. It shows the Last Supper. There are a lot of hands here. Christ is holding up his right hand in an unusual way, pointing to himself with three fingers held together, indicating the Trinity. These formal icons speak an ancient, unbroken language of gesture, which contributes to their timelessness and feeling of otherworldliness. In the Middle Ages, gestures had a much greater significance than they do today. Jacques Le Goff, a leading French historian who died in 2014, characterised the medieval period as une civilisation du geste, a civilization of the gesture. Gestures could be so important that they had legally binding consequences. For example, in the ceremony of homage, the vassal would place their hands between the hands of their master, pledging submission. One such ceremonial gesture that has survived is the ritual holding of hands or hand fasting during the marriage ceremony, which is continued today in the Christian Church. Today I've chosen this book to look at more closely. It dates from the 12th century and contains the sermons of St. John Chrysostom, one of the fathers of the early church, an important interpreter of the Bible and Archbishop of Constantinople. The name Chrysostom means gold-tongued. In his sermons, some of which lasted up to 2 hours, John was not afraid to criticise the mighty and condemn the corruption at court. The Empress Eudoxia forced him into exile, where he died in the year 407. Many copies of John Chrysostom's sermons survive, but this one is really special. At the end of the book is an account of the saint's life, and on the very last page is this astonishing drawing. Not many 12th century line drawings survive, and few are of this quality. It's illustrating a story in which a monk called Marcus has a vision that he is in paradise, searching for the saint who is concealed in the highest heaven, surrounded by angels. The story was written down by another monk, Macarius, and here Marcus and Macarius are shown as two tonsured figures at the bottom. Above them is John, flanked by two six-winged angels. As they have 6 wings, I would say they are seraphim, but just as often they are referred to as cherubim. At the very top, Christ is seated in majesty within a vesica with angels on each side. The drawing was made with a fine quill and ink, which the artist, almost certainly a monk, would have made himself. Every line is graceful and assured. Just look at the folds in the robes and the curves of the wings. The same artist, or one of his school, illustrated a psalter which was made for the nuns of Shaftesbury Abbey in Dorset, now in the British Library. It's a line drawing of elegant simplicity, in which gestures are important. The way Christ is depicted is typical of Western medieval art. In his left hand, he holds the orb and cross, signifying his dominion over the world. His right hand is raised in a formal gesture of benediction or blessing, with the 2 smallest fingers curled into the palm and the other 2 fingers held up together. The seraphim, with their 6 wings covered in eyes, are the part of the heavenly host of angels closest to God. They are standing with arms out, palms open and extended, in a gesture that nowadays means something like, "I've got nothing to hide." But in this context, it signifies praise. The job of a seraph, as described in Isaiah chapter 6, is to praise God unceasingly. Praise of God is a type of prayer, and so this gesture can signify prayer more generally. As we noted, it is also a gesture that by its very way of leaving the body unshielded suggests openness, and in a Christian context can also indicate the receipt of God's grace. A two-way thing really. Praise and prayer is offered and grace received. It's a very powerful gesture. The monk on the right also has his palm extended and held up towards the vision. It's a gesture of witness, of the receipt of the vision. This same gesture appears on the Hereford Mappa Mundi. At the bottom right of the map, a youthful horseman mounted on a fine palfrey is riding away from the world, turning to look back towards its centre. The meaning of this drawing has never been entirely explained, but it has been suggested that he is riding away from this life into eternity, looking back on a vision of the world as God's creation. Another theory is that he's more interested in looking at the mermaid in the Mediterranean Sea. The other monk is pointing towards the vision, as if to say, "Look, take note." We use the phrase "to point out" all the time, not literally meaning pointing with a finger, but meaning that some stress or emphasis is used. Whether literal or figurative, attention is being drawn to something significant. The disembodied pointing finger became a sign that a reader could insert in the margin of a book to draw attention to an important passage and help find it again. We find them drawn again and again in the margins of many books, from the medieval through to the early modern periods. We've strayed into the margins of books now, and I want to conclude by showing you this unmistakable gesture, which has not lost its meaning over time. This is literally pulling a face. It's from a lavish copy of Gratian's Decretum, the most widely studied book of canon law. Next time, we'll be looking at margins and some of the weird and wonderful things that you can find there.